Hello, my name is Anita Harriet. I'm president of the Fine Art Group, and I want to welcome you all today for this 30-minute webinar doing a deep dive into curating a collection. Our focus today will be the Bar Cross Ranch, which we are so excited. We'll be selling at Sotheby's. And what I'd like to do to start is give about 30 more seconds for people to join, and then I'll introduce our panelists today. But again, welcome, and we really look forward to this half an hour together today. And Elizabeth, can you go to the next slide? Okay, so I'll introduce myself again. I'm Anita Harriet. I'm president of the Americas for the Fine Art Group. And again, welcome for this 30 minutes for us to focus on one really exciting single owner collection coming to Sotheby's in the upcoming very soon. And so I'm going to have each of our panelists introduce themselves, and then we're going to do a deep dive into how this particular collection was built, the thoughts behind the collection, and kind of really understand each of the different components of the collection from our experts. So Carrie, off to you.
Thank you. My name is Carrie Jeffrey. I'm a Senior Director of Agency and Advisory here at the Fine Art Group, assisting our clients with strategies for sale for all tangible assets, including fine art, furniture, decorative arts, and other objects, as you will see in this collection.
Off to you, Jody.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jody Pollack. I'm the chairman of the 20th Century Design Department at Sotheby's, and I'm delighted to be with you today to be talking about a specific component of the Bar Cross Ranch collection that focuses on the furniture and objects by a terrific cabinet maker, Thomas Molesworth.
Thanks, Jody. Kayla, off to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kayla Carlson. I'm the head of American Art here at Sotheby's. American art being everything from colonial portraiture through the middle of the 20th century, and very pleased to be part of the Bar Cross Ranch sale.
Thank you, Kayla. And last but certainly not least, Alex.
Hi there, I'm Alex Grogan, head of African and Oceanic art here at Sotheby's, with a sidebar to pre-Columbian and Native American art, the last of which is what is relevant here today for the Bar Cross Ranch. Some wonderful indigenous Native American artworks that are part of the story. So happy to be here. Thanks.
Thank you so much. And just having these specialists gives you a really good sense of what it means to build a cohesive collection with lots of different components and expertise. We wanted to kind of quickly focus on this notion of the single owner sale and what that means. And this is a really good example of that. And essentially for many of our clients who have built significant collections, what we are seeing more and more in the marketplace are these single owner sales. And it's an opportunity for a buyer to have access to a collector's appetite, to a collector's acute eye. And many of these pieces tend to be new to the market or rare to the market. But the goal is to really be able to acquire works from a collection. And as advisors, we've seen more and more that these collections are actually more valuable as an entity than their individual components. Jody, do you want to spend a second to talk a little bit about what that might mean in essence for like the CICAD collection, which just sold recently?
Absolutely. So we had the great pleasure of collaborating and partnering with the Fine Art Group on a marvelous collection of Tiffany lamps, and this was the CICAD collection. We sold it in early December, and each one of these collections, you may say, oh, this is one of many Tiffany collections that Sotheby's has represented over the last decade. But from my perspective, each one of these single owner collections has its own kind of identity and spirit, and there's always a really fascinating narrative for us to tell and pull out. And that's really what our client base, I think, gets so excited about. So this collection in particular was largely focused on the full range of Tiffany's leaded glass lamps. But this one collector really had a specific passion and eye for the naturalism that you see in Tiffany's lamps. And what we're seeing on the screen here is the very iconic dragonfly lamp. Again, this tie into naturalism, whether it's floral patterns or the animal theme. So this was an incredibly exciting collection. It did really, really well. Everyone was thrilled. It brought, above the pre-sale estimate ranges. And, just in general, Tiffany is a very critical kind of defining market for the world of 20th century decorative arts and design that we represent here at Sotheby's. It's one of our biggest markets and one of the deepest and most global markets today. There are buyers not only here in the United States, but also very active buyers in Europe and also Asia.
Yes, thank you so much. And I would say, as we're also advisors for acquisition, we get so excited when we see a single owner sale come up to collection. And so many of the times we are outbid and we're not able to acquire these pieces because there's always a lot of acquisition appetite for these single owner collections. We have another exciting collection coming up in the next couple weeks, the Sidney Rothberg collection, focused primarily on art across really all of the decades and all of the oeuvres. But this particular collector always wanted to find what was that unique aspect of the artist's oeuvre that he wanted to pay attention to. So we are really looking forward to that collection. And we're going to talk today about the Bar Cross. So let's go to the next one, please. So Carrie, we've both been to the Bar Cross Ranch. We have worked with this client for many years. This is a collection we feel so intimately connected to. Tell us a little bit about the Bar Cross Ranch.
Certainly. I mean, the Bar Cross Ranch is not only, it's a massive, massive ranch that is very important for conservation reasons. And I think that was really important to our client. But it also has a long storied history that goes back to P.W. Jenkins, who originally owned the ranch. It then passed down to a very notable figure who was a lyricist for the Grateful Dead, Barlow. He is also known for his political ties. He was very connected to the Kennedy family, and Jackie Onassis actually asked for John F. Kennedy Jr. if John F. Kennedy Jr. could be a ranch hand for a summer. And that was in 1977. So while our focus on the ranch really was in being respectful to the time period that the house itself, which is this is not a large, massive, sprawling ranch house. This is a circa 1910 arts and crafts house. It's being respectful to the history of the ranch. We also wanted to sort of touch on the pop culture references and the John F. Kennedy. So that was part of the collecting focus as well. I would say that where the ranch is located, it's by the Green River in Wyoming, a beautiful setting that was an inspiration for a lot of the artists that are represented in this collection. And we really wanted to pay homage to the views that you saw from the ranch, but also the collecting area. So for instance, when Alex speaks later about some of the pieces that are created by the Native American tribes, we really wanted to focus on the Plains and the Sioux Indians that would have been in this area near Wyoming. In terms of the artists, we really looked to the period, again, sort of turn of the century, sort of tipping our hats back, looking at the past as well with some earlier works by Catlin that could have been part of a collection for this time period. And then we did go a little bit into the future with the Molesworth, which is mostly 1930s, 1940s, but again, is still sort of very authentic to the period that we were looking to create in this ranch house, this circa 1910 ranch house. But again, it has such a storied history. And, our collector was very respectful in terms of the ranch itself, the history it had, and acquiring pieces that that told a story and all tied together beautifully.
Thank you so much. Can you go to the next one, Elizabeth? So let's do a deep dive and let's start to kind of analyze these kind of different themes that Carrie has laid out so clearly. So Kayla, take us, why Thomas Moran? Why would he be essential to this
Thomas Moran was, one of the sort of founding members of the second generation of the Hudson River School, and initially known for works on the East Coast in terms of subject matter. But in the early 1870s, he traveled west with a government survey or expedition of Yellowstone and other parts of the American West, which at this point in time was very much untamed landscape. And he returned with these fabulous, sort of luminous, almost Turner-esque landscapes of the American West, which became synonymous, with those sort of expeditions and with that moment in American history. He, as a painter, has always been a favorite in the marketplace. Primarily because he does appeal to both Hudson River School collectors and collectors of the American West. So his market tends to be broader than that of artists that may appeal to just one of those groups rather than both. And this period of this particular picture is his most highly sought after period. So when you're looking for Moran, you do generally look for Western subjects first and foremost. And the Green River is the subject that is most prized in the marketplace. All of the records for Moran link back to the Green River. But then you also look for date. He lived a very long time, significantly longer than many of his contemporaries from this period. And he painted for a very long time. But he was at the peak of his abilities really in the 1870s and 1880s when he's first seeing some of these landscapes for the first time. And then he gets a bit softer in his rendering of works after about 1900. So when people are looking for Green River pictures or they're looking for Moran in general, they're looking for this period. And I think the Fine Art Group did an amazing job of selecting this example for the Barcross Ranch.
And Kayla, I keep thinking about our client who's not originally from the West, but when he first goes to Wyoming, he sees the Green River, he sees the vastness of this ranch. I imagine it was kind of a similar feeling that Thomas Moran had coming from the East Coast and the cities and urbanization, and then seeing the West and its magical powers.
Yeah, it really is magical. And this particular example, the number of people who have come through and said like, wow, like the color, the quality of this particular example is just astounding, because you can stand across, a huge room, and this painting, although it's only 13 by 20 inches, has a tremendous impact. The color is just incredible. And the other thing that you look for Moran, as from a market perspective, is the crispness of details, and whether or not, you can really sort of identify specific elements of the landscape, which you absolutely can do in this picture. I mean, the light aside, the actual accuracy of this depiction is also very spot on.
Thank you so much. Let's go to the next one, please. So Kayla, tell us about George Catlin.
So George Catlin was actually similar to Moran, but about a generation earlier. A American who had the opportunity to travel west with a government exposition. He traveled out west in the 1830s on multiple occasions, but his objective was a little different than Moran's. He was focused more on the native peoples rather than the landscape. So he is most well known for a series of, I shouldn't say he's most well known for this series because there's so many things he's well known for, but he is well known for a series that he did of a Native American portfolio. So if you look at the drawing, the work on paper in the lower right on the screen, He did a series of works on paper as he was exploring these indigenous people for what would be a portfolio that was published and distributed as lithograph plates. And you could buy 25 lithographs bound, or you would receive them as a subscription service, and then you would bind them. And because of the sort of mass marketing appeal of that, he became a household name in his lifetime. What's much harder to find really are these oil paintings, which you're seeing on the left side. This picture of the buffalo chase is a large easel painting that he would have done depicting Native people on a buffalo chase with as much accuracy as he could have. He became well known for his portraits of Native Americans, primarily because many of them were gifted to the Smithsonian. And if you want to move to the next slide, you'll see what the gallery looks like at the Smithsonian, what they refer to as Catlin's Indian Gallery. These works are what is considered the largest collection of Catlin paintings anywhere on the globe, and they have been at the Smithsonian American Art Museum since the 1890s, when they were gifted by the original collector's widow. The only other real notable collection of Catlin in one place is a group of paintings that were actually handled or owned at one point by the Field Museum, which is actually the same provenance that you have for the buffalo hunt that we just looked at from the Barcross Ranch sale. The Field Museum had the benefit of owning, I believe, over 30 works by George Catlin, which would have been the second largest collection of these in one place. And of course, with the Smithsonian owning most of them, these very rarely trade on the market, so it's hard to find one. But the Field Museum back in 2004 decided to start selling some of their Catlins. When they did, it was the initial sale was a large group of portraits, which were meant to initially be sold separately. And then a private collector swooped in and ultimately acquired all of them as a group sale for over $15 million in order to keep the group together. And later, the Field Museum went on to sell other examples, including this particular work, which sold at Sotheby's in 2011. But if a museum isn't selling these, they're just incredibly difficult to get your hands on. So it's remarkable that the Barcross Ranch collection was able to acquire both the oil and several works on paper and sort of gather them in one place, because it's very much unheard of in the market.
Thank you so much. So now we can focus very much on the Barcross's deep compassion for the Native American indigenous peoples. So can we go to the next slide, please? And Alex, off to you.
Thanks, Anita. Yeah, so we're going to go from representations of Native Americans to artwork by Native Americans. And I think what's really wonderful about the Barcross Ranch collection is that it allows us to kind of find stories and connections in between artworks that are sometimes underrepresented, or kind of stories waiting to be told. And it's different from being in a museum or reading a book. It's like discovering these stories through collecting. And I think not only is that culturally interesting, but this kind of collecting adds value to the entire collection, which is sort of what we're talking about today. So the first starting point here, this is one of the earliest pieces of Native American art in the collection, will be this Arapaho robe. And this is kind of representative of a classical tradition. You have this beautiful geometric design on a painted and incised into this child's robe, a wearing robe. And this sort of gives us a backdrop for the visual culture that we'll see in later works in the collection, of these traditions of the Great Plains and how they're representing reality, really, and telling stories. So we'll move on from here to this also, by the way, has a great provenance, came from a Sotheby's sale in 1971. So highly desirable, very beautiful piece. Great to have that early provenance. So next slide, please, for the. So from there we get, there's maybe the most important piece in the collection, which is a sketchbook by an artist named Itali Donmo, who is a Kiowa warrior. And this is a tradition that's known really as ledger drawing. And that's because these Great Plains artists, this is in the sort of third quarter of the 19th century, began to draw in the same idiom that they were doing on buffalo hides and even on rock earlier than that, are drawing images onto commercially available paper, which would have been either accounting ledgers, which is why we call them ledger drawings, or sketchbooks or loose sheets of paper that they acquire, by trade or given. So this tradition emerges of ledger drawing. And one very famous episode in the history of ledger drawing is there's a group of warriors that were captured in the Great Plains. So this is in like the region of present-day Oklahoma, I think. Captured as part of the wars in the 1870s. They're brought to Fort Marion, which is an old Spanish fort in Florida, St. Augustine, Florida, where they're held captive as, prisoners of war, basically. And it's discovered that several of them are actually artists and are able to make these beautiful drawings. And they're kind of emerged a practice of them making drawings and then selling them to visitors, almost like tourists or diplomatic visitors that were coming to see the sort of Kiowa warriors or other Great Plains warriors that were held captive there. And I think this moment kind of connects classical Kiowa art with the present world, and it allows us to. It's a sort of story of preserving these pictorial traditions, not only the style of the artwork, which is amazing. If you get a chance to click through our cataloging for this, the drawings are incredibly charming and very beautiful, like a different type of representation than other styles you might be used to from any world tradition. But also it has the cultural information. There's depictions of hunts, ceremonies, diplomatic visits, battles, topography. There's just a richness of information that's in here that's preserved because of this, the survival of these drawings and the fact that they were made in a format that we can see today. So it's really kind of the beginning of contemporary Native American art, a story of kind of survival and resilience, and connects to the other artworks in the collection, both in this kind of art historical way back to the other hides that represent the earlier traditions of Great Plains artwork, but it also has these cross-cultural affinities, which are really wonderful to see with the other Western artists and traditions in the collection. So really exciting collection to discover.
How important is it that it's a complete portfolio? How rare is it to find a complete portfolio?
Incredibly rare. So there's 24 drawings in this book on 33 pages. And you can imagine that throughout the 20th century, especially, the motivation of the market would have been to break these up, and they can be sold, the pages separated and sold one by one. I think today to have a book that is preserved in its entirety, and you have not only the ability to kind of see Itali's style in many different, it's like having a whole sketchbook basically, but also the different subjects he chooses to represent. There's a lot of important ethnographic information that's preserved here. To have it together is really, really special. And it's an intimate experience looking through the book because you feel that the artist is there. It's a wonderful object. So
Thank you so much, Alex. So now let's do a deep dive into ranch culture with a specific focus on Molesworth. So can we go to the next one, please? Jody, take us through this and that gorgeous door. I love that.
Okay. Well, I'm going to first start by introducing to you all Thomas Molesworth, because this is probably not a name that you're all familiar with. Molesworth was active from the 30s to the 1950s, working out of Cody, Wyoming. And, he's what I would describe as sort of an individual furniture maker and cabinet maker. This was not a large production like Gustav Stickley that, had, hundreds of workers producing furniture for direct purchase. Molesworth was really an individual craftsman who was making furniture, lighting, and smaller objects really for specific commissions. So the only time that you really see it come up, it's quite rare, is when things are coming out of their original homes that he would have designed them for, or when secondary collections reemerge on the market, like this one from the Barcross Ranch, where you have a collector that for perhaps decades has been pursuing Molesworth and putting a collection together, which is really not an easy task today because, like I said, these things really don't come up on the market very often. It's what I would really describe as kind of like a niche market. I think his furniture is absolutely fantastic. It's not derivative in any way. And what I mean by that is it's really unique. And I would describe his furniture as being of like a Western vernacular, what we kind of call like, Western or cowboy chic. While it looks somewhat, simplistic, it's actually incredibly sophisticated. And what you invariably will see on all of his furniture form, he's really well known for making these incredible, very overscaled lounge chairs and sofas, tables of all different sizes and forms, lighting, metalwork. But, he's using the finest materials, these incredibly sort of like luscious leathers of all of these different jewel colors. And what you see on all of these different furniture forms are motifs, again, that are speaking to this Western theme. And, there was no one really, doing this before Molesworth. Once he became very popular, there were many other firms that were working and in a way kind of like copying what he was doing. But again, the quality of his work really speaks for itself. So this has been a really strong collecting area, I would say, since, the 80s and 90s when he was sort of, rediscovered. And the collectors today, similar to the collection that we're looking at, are very often seeking this material for, incredible ranches and lodges out west, because, you can imagine if you have like an incredible home in Jackson Hole or Aspen, and you're doing a home with Molesworth furniture, it's fantastic. And, just has a wonderful dialogue with the land, the scenery, the architecture of these homes. And fabulous about Molesworth, and, this is probably the fourth collection that we have handled in the last 5 or 6 years, is that it can really work alongside quite anything. I mean, here we're seeing it in the context of, Western American art and, Native American and indigenous art. And I think the dialogue between those three sort of principal areas is really fantastic. It just, everything is kind of speaking to one another. But we'll see shortly in the next slide in a few minutes that, people have put Molesworth next to very cutting edge, progressive contemporary art. It really can go and be used in a lot of different ways. So, what I love about the pieces in this collection is that, each one I think was very thoughtfully chosen. You've got a wonderful range of all the major forms that Molesworth produced, from the club chairs and seating forms to tables. And I think one of the great highlights in the collection is the door that we're seeing on the right side of this screen, which is a unique piece. You will not see this created for any of his other commissions. And it comes from one of Molesworth's most important and iconic commissions that was known as Old Lodge, which was a, spectacular, very large, sprawling ranch in Colorado. And, this is very well known amongst Molesworth collectors because it was one of the first major collections to come up on the market in its entirety several decades ago. So this door has actually traded a few times in different collections. And, you know, we're absolutely thrilled to have it in this collection as one of the defining lots. You know, it's a wonderful accent piece for this interior, and you can see how it was utilized and integrated into this ranch. But what I think is so fascinating about it is all of the different imagery, the iconography that you see, that again, it connects to other areas in this collection, whether it's the ledger books or, you know, different icons that you're seeing in the art. If we want to go to the next slide, these are images from another collection, the Bloom collection that we sold several years ago. This was one of the first Molesworth collections in a few decades that had come to market. And what I loved about this, I walked into this home and was really, really shocked because, you know, the last thing I was expecting was to see a home in Idaho with all of this like very emerging 21st century art. The owners here had a very different story to tell than the one that we're focusing on today. The wife of this couple was actually a contemporary gallerist in Los Angeles. This was sort of their second summer residence, and a lot of the art that we saw throughout the home were artists that she was representing in her gallery. But they chose to incorporate Molesworth throughout the entire house, and it really worked. It was really fabulous, and it was a wonderful kind of dichotomy between the art and the you know, these jewel colors that you saw throughout the Molesworth furniture. So this is a perfect example of how design and decorative arts can work in sometimes very unexpected contexts. And I think what's so special about it is that it really kind of shows the true taste and character of the owner, and again, the story that they want to tell by the interior that they're putting together.
Jody, so, and all the folks at Sotheby's, tell us a little bit about this particular sale. You know, where can they see it? When is the sale? Can you provide the audience information about this sale in particular?
Absolutely, absolutely. So the Barcross Ranch is right now on exhibition at Sotheby's. You're all welcome to come and visit our preview, which really looks spectacular. Again, the preview, the vision behind the preview was to present all three of these markets together so you can see the dialogue, the connections between, you know, the art and the objects. And I think everyone that's gone through it, it's made a very, very strong impression. The auction is this coming Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern time. And, you know, if you go to Sotheby's.com, and you'll see right on our homepage a link to Visions of America. This is the variety of sale events that we've put together this week, focusing on American art, American decorative arts, and also a few different collections, including the Barcross Ranch. It will take you to the link to this digital catalog, and a variety of other promotions, including a short video that we put together on the collection.
Thank you so much. We want to thank you all. I have to say we are perfectly on time. Thank you so much for all of you coming on and sharing your expertise. It's been such a pleasure working with this collection, and we're so excited to see the pieces going to new wonderful homes where new collections can emerge. So thanks everyone again for joining us, and have a great day, and take a preview of the collection. I'm sure you'll love it. Thank you.